And all the while, this is occurring with increasingly complex nervous systems. And each one of these neuronal creative advances are ways that the universe, that the cosmos, becomes more sensitive to itself. It's the way that it creates ways to actually be self-aware. Most people have an idea of creativity as something that happens in human beings, and usually only in human beings, and then usually only in a very select few human beings, namely the sort of geniuses, the artistic geniuses, philosophical geniuses, physics geniuses, and so on. But one of the first things we want to do is erase that notion and point out the ubiquitous, the universal, the ever-present nature of creativity, and make sure that each of you understand that creativity is something that is fully operating in you now, and something that you have full access to right now. And so we're going to help you search out these sources of creativity and learn how to act with them for whatever purposes you wish. And to start at the start, we are talking about where on earth this entire manifest universe has come from. I mean, it's very strange. About 14 billion years ago, there was, as far as physics can tell, more or less absolutely nothing. Just simply nothing. And then in one of the most enormously creative events in the history of the universe, we had the Big Bang, or flaring forth. And the fundamental aspects of the physical universe, as we know it, blew into existence. And this is an extraordinary event, because out of nothing, all of a sudden, we have something. We have this world of material particles. But this doesn't mean that creativity is over. This is really just the start, just the beginning of what will be coming afterwards with even further creative acts. So it starts with something like strings, and these come together into quarks, and then quarks gather together and form electrons and protons and neutrons. And these come together to form atoms, and atoms come together to form molecules. And we sort of blithely say quarks to atoms to molecules, but each one of those steps is a staggeringly creative event. The movement from quarks to atoms is a creative emergence, and the move from atoms to molecules is a creative emergence. And it just doesn't seem to stop. So far from the major forces of the universe being randomness and chance selection, one of the fundamental forces of the universe is, for lack of a better term, artistic creativity, absolute creativity. And as a force which is unrelenting, it just never lets go. From molecules, which creatively arrange themselves into all sorts of different types, then in one of the still most astonishingly hard to understand and amazing miracles, strings of several dozen different types of molecules are all brought together and coalesce into living cells. A cell membrane drops around these molecules, and all of a sudden we have the creative emergence of cells and the creative emergence of life forms. And all of a sudden, from insentient matter, life emerges. This is a staggeringly extraordinary event. And yet, it doesn't stop there. From cells, different types of organisms are built up. We move to plankton, and from there into larger vegetation, both in ocean and starting on land. And then we have the creation of fish. We have the creation of amphibians. Then we're up to reptiles, including such astonishingly complex and creative animals as dinosaurs. And after a huge meteorite wiped out the dinosaurs and left room for mammals, then we have the emergence of the mammalian forms. And all the while, this is occurring with increasingly complex nervous systems. We go from simple sensation and perception to a reptilian brain stem, to a paleo-mammalian limbic system, to a cortex, to a neocortex. And each one of these neuronal creative advances are ways that the universe, that the cosmos, becomes more sensitive to itself. It's the way that it creates ways to actually be self-aware. And then we hit the neocortex, and very soon human beings are off and running. Then the capacity, the creativity, shifts to many of the other perspectives and dimensions that sentient beings at that point start to have available to them as human beings. The cultural dimension is starting to emerge and evolve in a much more serious way. The social dimension is starting to emerge and evolve in a much more serious way. Certainly the neurophysiology and brain chemistry and the very structure of the central nervous system is becoming extremely complex and capable of picking up enormous subtleties in the environment. Of course, this creativity, if you use other terms for it, is in part another name for evolution. Because evolution is the mechanism of bringing new forms into being. And so evolution and creativity go hand in hand. And of course, if we actually look at creativity and say, okay, where does that come from? Then we're allowed to start thinking in terms of spiritual realities, and that evolution and creativity are spirit in action. So what we have is all of a sudden this sort of age-old notion of the world being created by God, but it starts to take on a new version of that truth, namely that the manifest created universe is indeed a manifestation of spirit. It's spirit in action. It's the actual way that spirit manifests itself through increasingly conscious and increasingly complex life forms via evolution. And this is continuing up into human beings. And there the creative evolutionary process starts to really flower in all four quadrants. The four quadrants, by the way, are four basic dimensions present in all phenomena. You can look at anything in the individual and the collective, and in the interior and the exterior, giving you four basic perspectives or dimensions. In a human being, there's the interior of the individual, known by introspection and referred to in first person, or an I space. But you can also look at the individual organism from an exterior, more objective, scientific, third-person view. And the same with the collective human. You can look at any group from within, its values, needs, worldviews, etc., and from without, its systems, infrastructure, ecological context, and so on. And all four of these quadrants or dimensions evolve. And so as humans emerge, we start to see the existence and creative emergence of worldviews and values and needs and motivations. And all of a sudden, we are seeing evolution in the human species start to occur. And that is a direct result of this spirit in action, a direct result of this creative evolution. And it appears that the forces of spirit in action, which includes creativity, and if you want, you can also point out that love is a creative act, and this love and creativity are built into the universe from the very first moment of the Big Bang. And spirit in action is operating by this creative emergence, by this love. And that's how manifestation starts to build up. That's the actual mechanism that the manifest universe comes into being. And so these capacities, such as creativity, are not something that are rare, are not something that occur in just the occasional human genius. They occur in moment-to-moment existence, in every phenomenon.